the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm really good.
There's a psychological concept in law enforcement I've never heard anybody else talk about before, and it's hyper-responsibility and threat anticipation. And it basically happens when you have this level of anxiety that a lot of first responders carry after their shift, and it's that nagging, that relentless fear, that feeling that you're missing something important.
I'm going through those scenarios in my head because I hear them all the time from my officers, from my partners, from like, oh, what happened with this? I can't believe I missed that. And you see them like texting all the time. So a couple weeks ago, one of my guys texted homicide. That's all he texted was homicide. And then one of my other guys just texted question marks, and then he goes, oh, there was a homicide at this location. And it was the first time he's ever done this. And I'm looking at it, like I didn't see it until the next morning. And then he texted later on that evening, another homicide. Like it was like a whole thread, and guys were just like, what is happening right now? Because it was the first time that's ever happened. And so when we got to work that next day, we're like, what the heck was that about? He's like, oh, I just want to let you guys know there was a homicide. And we're like, all of us go at 12 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, like we're sleeping. Why?
When talking through this with some officers, some of the questions that I've heard them ask themselves is, what if I missed a detail on that call? Or what if something goes wrong tonight and I'm not there? Or what if I should have done more? And I think it's important to just explore how that level of hyper responsibility makes first responders exceptional on the job, but it can also become this source of chronic anxiety when it never gets to be able to turn off.
Yeah, and I think that's where we when we don't find those ways of being able to turn it off, and I think, cops are the worst critics of one another, and we always say, you should never Monday morning quarterback what that person did, but we're the first ones to Monday morning quarterback it all the time. And when you think, well, I would have handled it this way, and it's always easy in the mindset to say or in the aftermath of it to say, I would have handled it differently. But it's not only being there to judge, but saying, well, this wouldn't have happened if I were there. Oh, well, it could have. You don't know all the situation, the dynamics with it. But we like to critique one another and to be able to say, hey, if I was there, I should have been there because this wouldn't have happened in that instance.
Hyper-responsibility basically develops when a person internalizes their excessive sense of obligation for outcomes. We see that all of the time in law enforcement, including the outcomes that are outside of their control, which is exactly what you just discussed. And I think this plays out in a lot of different ways. One of them is that you could be replaying the calls to be able to check for mistakes. Have you ever seen something like that?
Yes. And that's where I think it's important for us to debrief those types of calls after they're done, because if we not only recognize what I always say is like the good, bad, and ugly associated to it, but if you start worrying about I should have done this differently. And I had one of my guys a while back approach me, and it's like, he went through a hard night, and he's like, well, I should have done this differently. I should have done this, and maybe it would have changed this. And I told him, I'm like, look, dude, you did absolutely anything and everything you possibly could. Nothing could have changed the dynamics that how you responded to it. You did what you could. And I think we are our own harshest critics when it comes to essentially these negative events occurring, and we couldn't change the outcome of them.
I see a lot of first responders even having difficulty sleeping due to those intrusive what if type of thoughts. I was talking to an officer who was the first on a scene of a motorcycle accident, and he gets his trauma kit out of his vehicle and he goes to assist, and he basically knows, like, he did everything he could to stabilize this individual before he was taken off to the hospital. But in his mind, it was like, okay, that guy died. And he never got to close the loop on what happened with that. And so for about a week, I would hear some comments about that, of the what ifs, or like what else could have been done. And I think that it's that level of that hyper responsibility that follows you home in ways that, that's actually information, and it's a sign that this could be something that needs to be addressed.
When we carry those incidents home with us, and because there's going to be what if scenarios, no matter if it's good, bad, or ugly, and that's one thing I wish we would kind of look at more, is how many times do we what if scenario a good incident, like when things go right? And why don't we do that? It's because they went right. We start going down the rabbit hole of, well, things did not work out the way how they should have. Not because of anything you did, it's because of an outside environment or outside influence that created that.
Something that I noticed in your career is that towards the beginning, I think that a lot of the times maybe your shift ends, but that mental review doesn't. And over time, that's something that definitely gets better. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we learn those. It's almost like how AI works now. And this is, I've never really thought about it, but this is how AI works now. AI, as it's going along, it's getting smarter, it's more intelligent, it's learning what to do, what not to do, what works with you, your physiological responses towards things, but also the mental responses towards things, where in the early on stages of your career, it takes you longer to process them and to figure out how I should have responded, what I did right, what I did wrong, to where you can kind of pretty much the ladder in your career, you can run through those scenarios so fast where you're not harboring them, because then once you go through it, you let it go and it's done.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And there's a lot of different signs, I think, that hyper responsibility is following you home. And maybe you're the type of person who checks your work messages, your calls, or your emails on your days off. And the reason you do it is because that level of disconnection, if you're honest, actually feels dangerous in some way.
And that's where, if we've talked about this before, is not having that separation between your work and home life. And you really want to have that separation because you're not so tied into the identity of this is only who I am.
So how do we correct this? I think that one of the most important things is to just separate accountability from ownership of all outcomes, because you're responsible for your actions, but you're not responsible for every result.
No, and that's where there's so many different, like when people go what if to me all the time and they're bringing up scenarios, and I always use this extreme scenario of like, well, what if an alien landed on top of your head right now? Like it's such a far-reaching type thing, like, because we can what if these scenarios and from so many different angles, but when we start doing that, it's not taking us down that healthy rabbit hole.
That would curb one of my biggest curiosities in life, and it would actually make me incredibly happy if that happened to me.
But then it would squish you.
You said an alien. Well, I was picturing a cute little...
Oh, like... See, I'm thinking like a whole ass UFO go... whack.
That's different. The being versus the craft are two different things.
Okay.
I think too that it's important to create a really clear end of shift mental boundary, because your nervous system needs to have this defined stopping point in order to be able to have that disconnection.
When you can create that disconnection for yourself, and that's why you have your kind of checklist of, just like you go out on a call for service, making sure you have absolutely anything and everything you need before you leave for your investigation. We should be doing the same thing when we get into our vehicles to go home at the end of the day, is going through this checklist of, okay, do I have everything and anything I need to wrap up my day and call it a day?
Yeah, and I think too that when we understand that boundaries are available and they're a part of taking care of your team, then we understand how important it is to be able to limit those work check-ins on your days off in order to be able to actually protect recovery, not just for you, but also for the people that you work with. I think it's super important. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even. Like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic!
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.